you mind if I tell you a story? Thanks. This is a story about a young woman who lived in a cold, bleak land. In that land, there was always winter. The trees were bare and stood like icy black sticks in the landscape. The land was barren and frozen, and she lived in a house by herself. It is very hard to keep warm, so what did she do? She put on layer after layer to bundle herself up, trying to keep warm, so that finally she looked like a large, shapeless ball, almost as wide as she was tall, trying to keep warm by adding layer on layer on layer. But she was not very happy because she spent all her time trying to keep warm. There was little time or energy for anything else, and still she felt cold and very lonely and very sad. But one day there came a brisk knock on the door. She waddled over slowly and clumsily to open the door, just a crack, so as not to let in too much cold, and as she peeked out fearfully, she asked, "Who is there?" A strong and firm voice replied, "What are you doing here? Did you not get our notice that everyone has been evacuated from this place? Come with me immediately." But the young woman said to the man, "Oh no, I can't leave my house. I'm afraid to leave the house." The strong voice insisted, "Nonsense. You must leave or you will perish here." And the stranger forced the young woman to come with him. Fearfully she waddled out and they started on a journey, and after a while she asked, "Where are you going? What will I do?" And the voice answered, "Trust in me. I'm taking you to a land where you can be warm and happy." But the young woman, who had never known warmth or happiness, felt very fearful, and yet she understood that she had no choice. So she waddled on as fast as she could after the stranger. They were following a path that led through all the desolation, and they proceeded in this way for many days. One morning the young woman noticed that the landscape seemed to be changing. Here and there she saw shrubs, and some of them had leaves. She had never seen such a sight before. She noticed also that she had moisture on her forehead and the palm of her hands, and moisture trickled down her body from her armpits. And so she asked the stranger, "What is this moisture on my forehead and on my hands and trickling down my body?" The stranger laughed with amusement. "You are sweating, my dear." "Oh?" said the young woman. "What is sweating?" And the stranger said, "When your body gets warm, in order to cool it off, it sends out moisture, which is called sweat. And when the moisture evaporates, you get cooler." "Oh," said the young woman with wonder. "Am I too warm?" And the stranger said, "Try taking off a layer or two and see how you feel." So timidly, with many fears, the young woman took off the top 2 layers, and she felt much more comfortable and much lighter immediately. She also found that she felt freer, and then she found that she could walk better and enjoy the landscape more. Each day, with wonder and with growing delight, she saw many new things appear as they proceeded on their journey. Leaves on the trees, little animals hopping about. The sun appeared golden and radiant, and the sky was blue, nothing like anything she'd ever noticed before. She said to the stranger, "We're in a new country." The stranger smiled and replied, "Yes, the climate is changing, and I notice that you have more sweat on your brow." And so the young woman, this time with much less fear and with some eagerness, took off another 2 layers. Oh, and she felt wonderful, much lighter. She was able to walk much better, and the stranger did not have to stop and wait for her nearly so often. She could swing her arms freely, and her legs felt longer. And she noticed each day that there were more trees in leaf, more flowers in bloom, more birds winging, more song. The breeze was fragrant and delightful on her face, and without waiting for the stranger to suggest that, she began taking off layer after layer and freeing her body more and more. Well, one day they arrived in a land of beautiful gardens in full bloom. Everywhere she looked, there were gardens surrounding her. And when she looked down, she saw herself, her own true self, her slender self, emerging from all the layers. And she saw that she was beautiful. She saw and felt her beauty and her freedom. She felt exhilarated with energy. She wanted to dance and sing. The stranger seemed to read her mind and said, "Yes, do dance and sing, my dear. Do feel your wonderful energy, your glow of happiness, your delight in your slenderness." And so the young woman began to skip and whirl and leap and run. Sometimes she would run ahead of the stranger, and then she would stop to look back, laughing, and sometimes she would dance circles around the stranger, feeling full of glee and mischief, and sometimes she would run back to pick a flower and put it in her shining hair. Sometimes, smiling and laughing, she would gather flowers and present them to the stranger. She felt so happy to be free that she said to the stranger, "Let us stop here. This is so lovely." And the stranger said, "Not yet, my dear. We're almost there, but not quite." The young woman asked with wonder in her eyes, "What other delights could there be?" The stranger smiled wisely and said, "You will see, my dear. You will see." One morning they came into a city of shining buildings and luxuriant gardens, and there, all about her, everywhere, the young woman saw others, slender and beautiful like her. They greeted her and they welcomed her and they asked for her name. Timidly she asked their names in return, and they invited her to join in their dances and their singing, and they included her in their family, and that is how she became part of the wonderful community that dwells among the gardens. She learned to share and to work with them. She learned to play and sing with them. And then one day, she singled out a particular person who also seemed to single her out. They joined hands and decided to be special to each other. And so the young woman lived happily ever after.